Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. Thanks for joining today. Um, we're going to dive in. We have a number of different speakers, but I'm going to start off. Uh, Today's press conference is about yesterday's vote in the Senate at the state legislature approving Senator Looney's tiered pilot proposal. And as folks know, and Senator Looney can go into more details when he speaks, but the tiered pilot proposal emphasizes equity and uh, the importance of funding for towns that are need. And historically, the pilot formula has not been need-based. It has been focused simply on the amount of non-taxable property that a town has. And so at this time of incredible or significant conversations around inequities, the state capital has taken I think, historic step and a very courageous step in ensuring that the funding from the state and this formula is based on need and a commitment to invest in municipalities around the state that are struggling to acquire funding. In New Haven specifically, we have approximately 60% of our property is non-taxable. And so pilot is very vital to us, as many folks that report on New Haven frequently know. But it is very important to many, many towns and larger cities around Connecticut. And that's particularly so because Connecticut, unlike most states in the nation, is heavily reliant on property taxes to support funding for municipalities. And so I think that the reason that this has been so successful this time is that the proposal has been one that has garnered the support of a large coalition of mayors and first selectmen around the state, big towns, small towns, bipartisan support. Some of those representatives you see on this call, and even mayors and first selectmen that may not directly, their towns may not directly benefit from significantly from the pilot funds, but realize that now is the time to do this because it's the right thing to do, to invest in our cities and towns to make sure that we all are successful. These kind of successes are what happens when we work together as a state. And I think that all too often around the nation, we see a lot of a struggle working together, but I'm so proud at this time that we can do something together in a bipartisan manner, suburban and urban centers to be successful. Um, Senator Looney, I want to take a moment in particular to thank you for your leadership here. Senator Looney's been working on this issue for many years, and without his leadership here, this could not have been successful. You have a very lengthy history of supporting people that don't have a voice. And I think this is just one very, very significant step that you have helped us all take to make sure that we have more resources to support our struggling communities. I also want to take a moment to give the rest of the New Haven delegation a shout out because they too have worked very hard on this. A number of the members of the delegation were not able to be here because, as folks know, there's a lot of ongoing committee hearings, and I'm grateful that Senator Lamar or Representative Lamar, you're able to join today. But wanted to acknowledge Representative Walker, who on the floor of the House was, I think, quite good at describing just why this tiered pilot proposal was so important. Representative Dillon, who was part of the hearings as well, and a strong advocate. Of course, Senator Winfield, Representative Paolillo, Representative Candelaria, Representative Porter, and Representative Damasa that we share with our partner over there in West Haven, who have worked tirelessly to help ensure this is successful. And I wanted to make sure, and folks will, I think, speak in a minute, but that I want to make sure that the other leaders of municipalities know how grateful I think we all are that this has been so collaborative. There's been no municipal leader that has said this is not a good idea that I have seen. But in particular for folks that their towns may not directly financially benefit, for you to come out and be prominent on this, we're very, very grateful. This is what happens when we work together in a bipartisan way. So with that, why don't I first hand it over to Senator Looney to make a few comments.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker, and I wanted to commend you for your efforts and advocacy on this. I think it was very important, your work in helping to assemble a large group of mayors and first selectmen from communities of different sizes early on to indicate the broad-based support for this proposal. Many of them are on the call here today. Want to especially thank Mayor Lang and First Selectman Frieda, whose towns I also represent. I represent Hampden and North Haven, as well as New Haven, the other members of the coalition who are here as well. What we did yesterday and what the House did in session last week is to recognize for the first time need as an element of the pilot formula. In the past, since the program was initiated over 40 years ago, and at that time, those who were representing New Haven then were involved in it to a great extent. Irving Stolberg and Joe Lieberman, who were then representing New Haven in the General Assembly. But the problem with the pilot, even though it was in itself a pioneering thing, because many communities, many states don't provide the equivalent of pilot at all, but pilot allocated whatever percentage of pilot was going to be funded in a given year was applied to every town for its tax-exempt eligible tax-exempt property, regardless of need. So it meant that Greenwich would get the same percentage reimbursement for its pilot eligible property as did New Haven or Hampden or West Haven or Hartford, and that was not equitable. And because there are some communities in the state, as mentioned, New Haven and some others have more than 50% of their property is tax exempt. There are many communities are in single digits in tax exempt property. So the need varies greatly as well. So what we decided to do is to try to create a more broad-based coalition for pilot and to look at the issue of equalized net grand list per capita, because that is really an indicator of need, and decided that those that have a net grand list per capita of under $100,000 are probably the most needy. So we set the three-tiered under 100,000, between 100 and 200,000, and over 200,000. In addition to that, we added into the top tier those not only who are under 100,000, but there are some other communities, about 13 in fact, who are alliance districts because of the challenges in their public education system and the number of low-performing students. So those communities were also added into the first tier. So there would be 42 communities overall in the first tier of pilot. So it was a far-reaching policy change, recognizing equity. One of the themes that we're looking at this year in the General Assembly is trying to look at everything we do through the filter of social equity, racial equity, and to try to bring that cast of mind to every policy change that we undertake. So we're very pleased that we were able to bring this about yesterday after the action in the House the week before. And I'm very pleased that it was a bipartisan vote. The bill in which the pilot change was contained passed the Senate on a vote of 28-7 yesterday. The vote in the House last week was similarly bipartisan. So I'm very pleased at that as well.
Thank you, Senator Looney, for your leadership and for everything that you're doing. I think that it's important to underscore that while the tiered pilot has passed, we still have a little bit more work to do to ensure that the funding levels through the budget process are high, but there's been, or what was included in the proposal. But the fact that there's been so much bipartisan support on this makes me very optimistic there. We're also joined by Representative Lamar. Representative Lamar, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all of the mayors and first selectmen across the state of Connecticut who've been a part of this team to get this to our point. That look, we know what the issues are in Connecticut that make us a little unique. We're one of only 2 states in the country that have a pilot program, but it's because we're one of the few states in the country that have such a difficult structural basis by which our municipalities are forced to operate in. We have 169 unique towns with almost no taxing authority other than the property tax, no county government to help share the costs and regionalize services and provide a baseline level of service for all residents in an area. So we have just that property tax to provide all of the fundamental services that our communities provide. And the state as a whole puts it on the back of towns and cities to provide those basic services. And again, when a town like the one I represent, New Haven, struggles with over 50% of its property being off the tax rolls completely, it's impossible for us to ask all of that we do of each and every municipality. So the pilot program changes that we've instituted this year, led by sort of a mentor and colleague of mine, Senator Looney, has really put us into a space where we can have a robust conversation across all district lines about what is the state's responsibility to our municipalities and how can we ensure that we're giving them the resources they deserve to fulfill the functions that we ask of them. Look, I oftentimes pick some fights with how communities may choose to engage in some areas of governance, but the reality is if we don't provide the proper funding to our communities, they're never going to be able to do the important work that we ask. And so I'm thankful for the senator's leadership in getting us to this point, and really thankful for the bipartisan leadership we've seen across the states of small towns and big ones coming together and saying it's time to make this system equitable and get the job done. So thank you all for your leadership on this.
Thanks, Representative Lamar. And I just wanted to mention, I think I neglected to mention Representative Candelaria, who's also been very, very helpful in the efforts here. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe DeLong, who heads up CCM and who was vital to this process as well in helping to represent so many municipalities across the state in this effort. Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. It's truly a pleasure and a privilege to be here with all of you today. I too want to sincerely thank Senator Looney, Representative Lamar, and members of delegations all across the state who again came together in a bipartisan fashion to support this legislation. One of the things that I think CCM has really tried to focus on and recognize these past several years is that if we compete from one community to another, essentially we lose as a state. That we are competing within a region, we are competing across this country, and we are in many aspects also competing across the globe in terms of growing our economy and getting to the level of prosperity that we all want to get to. And what I think is so important about this legislation is it is a positive step in that right direction to make us more competitive at a local level where we need to be more competitive and more competitive as a state. And I believe that we all recognize, and we could pick at the reasons why, but we all recognize that Connecticut did not grow very well coming out of the last recession. And it's very important that the state and municipalities position themselves to come out of the pandemic strong and to grow our economy and to get everybody participating in the economy and everybody having access to the economy. And that's why this equity work is so important. So, I'm extremely not only pleased with the representation that we've seen at the State House, but I'm also really honored and privileged to be able to work with a set of municipal representatives from all across the state. Again, not only bipartisan, but also urban, suburban, and rural, came together and understood that this isn't just about my community. This is about a bigger picture of Connecticut being more competitive and our economy being more competitive. And I think this is a big step in that direction. So, Mayor, thank you for having me on here today. Again, Senator Looney, Representative Lamar, and others in the delegation that may join or be able to join, thank you. And we certainly just look forward to continuing to work with you throughout the remainder of the session.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for your partnership here. I'm going to go over to First Selectman Hui, who Guilford doesn't get a significant bump here, but directly. But I think that obviously New Haven's relationship with Guilford, West Haven, East Haven, many other towns underscores that we're all in this together, and just appreciate your partnership, and on a personal note, appreciate your friendship through all this.
Mayor, I share those sentiments. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be with all of you today. I'm pleased to have joined many of my local peers, as well as those throughout the state via CCM, in supporting the tiered pilot legislation, which is now law, which for many communities in our state, including New Haven, is long overdue for desperately needed aid. I do so despite the fact that Guilford, as you just mentioned, Mayor, does not currently receive any pilot funding for state college and hospital-owned property. Will most likely not financially benefit from this legislation. However, we understand that regionally, we are all in this together, and that what is good for many of our cities and towns is good for us all. My community benefits from our proximity to our neighbor, New Haven, and we should be ensuring that New Haven has the resources they need to run their government and essential programs effectively in order to provide services for their residents, as well as those for the region at large. Our urban centers provide access to vital services for communities like Guilford, such as health, education, social, cultural, and importantly, jobs. And that's for the entire region, not just Guilford. And yet, communities like New Haven do not see adequate reimbursement for the loss of revenue from non-taxable property. I think it's well understood that Connecticut's path to economic prosperity will be achieved by ensuring that our cities are strong and financially sound. This is a step forward to ensure that that can happen. So I join you today to celebrate good public policy that will help our urban centers, my community, and our entire state in becoming a more equitable and prosperous place. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate.
Thanks, First Selectman Hoey. Appreciate that. Let's go over to Mayor Carbone from Torrington.
Yes, good morning. Excuse me. Boy, what a pleasure to be able to join this this press conference this morning to acknowledge the hard work that our delegation has undertaken in recognizing the significant needs of our municipalities, small and large. Torrington is one of the smaller cities in the state. However, we do experience a significant decrease in our ability to recover from some of the loss of revenue that comes from tax exempt properties. We serve the entire northwest corner as an urban center, and a lot of those social services and not-for-profits do land in Torrington, where there is a significant concentration of the population. So what do we know? We know that budget stability and predictability is the cornerstone to social and economic growth in our municipalities across the state. We also know that the state's pilot program does provide us the desperately needed aid that counterbalances the loss of that tax revenue. And I'm incredibly grateful that everybody recognized that establishing this tiered approach, acknowledging the equity for the distressed municipalities or municipalities that are most challenged with their tax base, will make this budgeting process a little more predictable and give us the economic relief so that we can concentrate on economic growth and educational advancement and not overly burden our taxpayers, our property owners. So again, I'm grateful for the bipartisan support of the bill. I added in my testimony that I submitted, and I just want to read it again. You know, if we are to recover from the pandemic, we need to make sure that all of our towns and cities that are struggling from the lack of tax exempt properties or lack of taxable revenue can be made whole without pushing a greater property tax burden on our residents and businesses. There's so much that needs to be done to strengthen our state. And I do feel that this is a critical step forward that recognizes the budget constraints we all face, but still responsibly delivers essential aid to the towns and cities. So thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to participate in this press conference.
Thanks, Mayor Carbone. Appreciate you being here. Let's go over to Mayor Rossi, our neighbor to the west.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Good morning, everyone. West Haven is proud to be part of the coalition of communities that is focused on the overall financial health and well-being of our Connecticut municipalities. West Haven is home to many tax-exempt entities, including Yale University's West Campus, the University of New Haven, and the Veterans Administration Hospital. All of these tax exempt organizations are good partners and provide a great benefit to the city. However, the city does lose significant potential tax revenue, especially with the state's pilot program being so underfunded. This legislation, when funded by the General Assembly, will provide the much needed assistance to struggling municipalities and will protect our local businesses and taxpayers from additional tax burden during the COVID-19 pandemic and in the future. Thank you, Senator Looney, Mayor Elicker, all of my fellow mayors and first selectmen, CCM, and our West Haven State Delegation members for your strong support on this very necessary pilot reform legislation. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mayor Rossi. Thank you for being here. Mayor Lang.
Morning. I wanted to echo really what all of our colleagues have said. And I particularly just want to mention that Senator Looney has been tenacious in making sure that this legislation has moved forward. And it's nice to see good government ideas not only discussed, but be able to be pushed forward and moved through and supported by bipartisan and communities throughout our state, large and small. And in particular, some that aren't even getting benefit because they understand, like I think the neighbors of New Haven do, that the state, as small as ours, we rise and we fall together. New Haven's success is Hamden's success, is West Haven's success. And these additional dollars that are coming through are going to be very significant in this budget process. They're going to go directly to helping teachers and policemen and firemen in our communities, in communities all across the state where our taxation and the lack of taxation diversification has really hit people in the pocketbook hard. And it's going to be very helpful. And I just want to say on behalf of Hamden, I'm very thankful to Senator Looney, to Senator Cabrera, our new representative, for their efforts fighting, Mayor Elicker as a local leader and helping to spearhead pushing this forward, and the rest of the Hamden delegation. Thanks very much, everyone, for your effort and this teamwork. This is the way we can get things done.
Thanks, Mayor Lang. And I appreciate you underscoring the many other representatives and senators at the Capitol. I've been in communication with a lot of them over the last several months, and the coalition up there has been very, very helpful to making sure this has the support it needs as well. Last but certainly not least, the former head of CCM, Mike Frieda, First Selectman Frieda.
Thank you very much, Mayor Elicker. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful for being invited to be here this morning. My colleagues really summed it up very, very well. I'd like to thank Senator Martin Looney for his leadership in presenting this bill, and I'm delighted to see the bipartisan support both in the Senate and the House to get this bill passed. So that right there, ladies and gentlemen, represents to me a mirror image of how we work as chief elected officials. We work so closely together, both on a regional, a state level, and even a local level with the neighboring communities. Each of us care about each other. Each of us want the best for each other as we're representing our own cities and towns. I'm grateful for the relationships that I have with everybody on this call here and with my colleagues across the state. This is a very important bill to many municipalities. North Haven does receive a little bit more incremental money on this, but it's beyond that. It's the support that this bill gives to many of the urban areas, some of the suburban areas, and even some of the rural areas that support this concept. You know, I mentioned the last time I was on that on a personal note, I was born in the city of New Haven. I grew up in the city of West Haven, and I love, of course, the town I live in and represent in North Haven. But because I have this deep perspective of having been born in New Haven, having grown up in West Haven, I see clearly some of the challenges some of my colleagues have in those areas. And I'm grateful to support this. Down through the years, when I first took office, I think the pilot was funded about 77% back then. And down through the years, it may have gone down to perhaps a little bit below 30% now. So this bill comes at a critical time as we're looking to present our budgets to our public and balance our budgets as best we can. So I'm grateful for the leadership. I'm grateful for the bipartisan support. Senator Looney, thank you again. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, First Selectman Frieda. Any questions from the press? Hi, Tom. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Maybe the first question for you, Mayor, and also over to Senator Looney, if you'd like to weigh in. Mayor, yesterday you proposed two city budgets, one a so-called crisis budget with a pretty significant tax increase, and another that keeps taxes flat but calls for an increase of over $50 million in state aid and Yale contributions. Can you speak to how this tiered pilot formula affects that call for over $50 million from the state and Yale, and how much you expect the city will receive in additional state aid thanks to this pilot formula?
I think both Senator Looney and I should answer this question. So I don't like to take anything for granted. I can say that yesterday's vote, coupled with the vote by the House last week, significantly increases the likelihood that we'll be able to pass a forward together budget or something close to it. However, I am the first to admit that the state legislative process is an enigma to me, and I never quite know what exactly is going to happen up there. And I think that we need to make absolutely sure that we push to ensure that, and I know that our delegation and many other delegations from other towns are committed to this, but ensuring that the funding is in place to ensure that happens. Senator Looney, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
It's just, Tom, of course, our budget process goes on from here, and the precise allocation of funds remains yet to be determined. But I'm confident that with this creation of the new three-tiered structure, recognizing need in the pilot program and the broad-based support for it in both the House and the Senate, catching up on the problems that we have had over the years of underfunding pilot, and recognizing that that need should be factored into it as it now is under this formula, is a strong indicator that this need will be addressed in the budget in a very substantial way in terms of priority funding.
Senator, do you have an updated estimate as to how much it would cost to fully fund this new three-tiered pilot formula as envisioned, and where might that funding come from?
Well, again, it's all part of the budget process. It would overall about $137 million to fund it by adding in the alliance districts also that in some cases have more than 100,000 net grand list per capita. But again, because there are so many towns that would benefit from this, there's broad-based interest in it. One of the things I think to keep in mind is that we are also increasing the funding under the three-tiered structure for the state property pilot, not just the college and hospital pilot. And while there are a limited number of towns who have private colleges or hospitals located in them, there are a far greater number that have state property located in them, and they will benefit from this increase as well.
And my last question, maybe for Senator Looney again. Senator, you said that kind of everything that your caucus is looking to do right now, you're looking through an equity lens. Could you speak a bit more to why you think this proposal passed now? Why is this a unique moment for progress on pilot?
Well, I think it is because senators and representatives recognize that this has been a longstanding problem, that pilot has been underfunded for a long time. It was not robustly funded in the last 20 years. Really, I think the last time it was funded at a much higher level was about 20 years ago when we were running surpluses, and Governor Rowland was actually looking to give rebates to people on their taxes and things of that nature. But the need has been greater as the percentage reimbursement has declined, and the fact that that need has not been a factor in the distribution has also something I think that has created a greater sense of inequity in the minds of legislators of both parties.
Thanks, Tom. I see Amelia has a question.
Thanks. Senator Looney, could you just say how many towns would fall into each of the tiered categories?
Yes, I believe that it is 42 would be in the top tier. 29 would qualify by virtue of being 100 under 100,000 in net grand list per capita. Another 13 by virtue of being alliance districts. I believe it is 91 that would be in the middle tier, which would be at a significant increase in reimbursement, 40% over the current level, and about 35, approximately 35 in tier 3, which under our proposal would still get a slight increase in their pilot from their current level.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, we've had a pilot program for some time. It has never been fully funded. What gives you the confidence that this new system of divvying up the pilot will be fully funded by the legislature?
Because more towns will benefit from this by structuring it based upon need, based upon net grand list per capita. There will be a larger number of communities that will get at least some benefit from it. Part of the problem previously was that pilot was of great importance to a relatively small number of communities. Now the benefit and the interest will be spread more broadly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia. Any other questions?
Mayor, if I might add just one thing for information. One of the things that has been most stark in this, and I think that it is something that helped persuade legislators to support this, was a point that was made to some extent by Representative Lamar and Mr. DeLong, is that Connecticut is a state of extraordinary contrast, that we have a community like Greenwich where the net grand list per capita is about $740,000. And at the other end of the scale, at 169th, is the city of New Britain, where the net grand list is about $50,000. And yet we are such a small state, and these contrasts exist in such close proximity to each other. Many of our suburban and rural towns are much larger in area than our central cities are. The cities, not only are they limited by having property taken off the tax rolls, as you know, the available space for development in the cities is also limited because our cities are physically very small. And that's an additional problem. They don't have large tracts of land for development. And all the more important to recognize that need within a tiered pilot formula.
Thanks, Senator Looney. Well, so if there's no other questions, I wanted to thank everyone for being here and for your collaboration. There's lots more opportunity in the future for us to do much more work together. So look forward to that. Thanks again. Good to see you all.